Hello, I am Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL. How's it going? The George Pickens trade is in the books. I'm recording this Thursday late afternoon. It has been official, and that is that. We broke that down heavy right after it happened. Going to keep our eyes out, obviously, for another receiver, another shoe to drop. I'm assuming and hoping that that will be the case. Somebody significant. Romeo Doubs, Alan Lazard, maybe somebody better. Both those would be okay. Two totally separate topics today, but just things I've been wanting to get to for a while. And I think they're both kind of interesting here. I know not everyone out there understands EPA, expected points added. I mean, it breaks down offense, defense, run game, pass game, whatever. You can sort it however you want. But there's a section just for quarterbacks too. EPA, what you bring from a points added standpoint. And to me, it's the best way of probably ranking defenses, quarterbacks, etc. Really breaks it down. And what I did was I went back and I watched some Rudolph film, with the Titans. And I know they ended up with the first pick in the draft. But he played pretty well, better than anyone wants to give him credit for. Terrible situation, terrible O-line. They were a bad football team. Nobody was really paying attention by the time he got in there. Levis is a mess, which Levis is a mess. But Rudolph was pretty steady and had a pretty good showing with the Titans. So what I did was I made sure he qualified. So I took all the quarterbacks with 200 or more pass attempts. He was just slightly over that. And there ended up being 42 of them. And just ranked them, or just had their EPA. Where did Rudolph rank out of the 42 qualifiers that includes him? And I found it kind of interesting because 4 names I want to talk about here. Justin Fields ended up 17th. Way better than I expected. His legs certainly contributed to that. Not a lot of mistakes, obviously. So he was 17 out of 42, Fields. Russell Wilson was 20. Now remember, he had some big moments. I mean, when he burst on the scene, he was pretty darn good. Now the end wasn't as good as the beginning, but he was 20th out of 42. I'm not implying any of these guys are, Joe Burrow last year, or Lamar. I mean, those guys were at the very top. But Rudolph was 23rd. That shocked me. That's pretty darn good. I mean, I still think he's a backup. I'm not sitting here implying that they should be done at quarterback. Rudolph's their answer. He's set for the next 10 years. He's the next Ben. Nothing like that. But I wanted you guys to realize that if he was the 23rd out of 42 quarterbacks last year, you'll take that every year from this guy. True middle of the road of all the guys that played meaningful snaps, a lot of snaps. That's pretty good. What was concerning, but not shocking, Aaron Rodgers was last of these 4, 26th. Now, that's not hideous, but that doesn't scream, I'm the answer, build everything around me. Now, what I will say with Rodgers is the beginning was way worse than the end for him. And I will do this, and I have done it, but you could sort it by, let's just do weeks, 1 through 8, and then second half of the season. And it's much better with, one of the problems with Rodgers for EPA is he doesn't bring anything to the table with his legs. And that's not going to change. But he definitely started slow coming back from a really serious injury. So that's undeniable. Also, at the trade deadline, they obviously traded for Devontae Adams, and he was thrown to Wilson and Adams. And it was much better post-trade deadline. And it also he obviously got more comfortable as well. But I just thought you guys would get a kick out of that. Field 17, Wilson 20, Rudolph 23, Rodgers 26. That being said, if I had one of these guys to lead the Steelers on opening day of the 2025 season that gives them the best chance to win for the year, I still think it's Rodgers. I really do. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA to NHL playoffs to MLB to UFC and boxing, BetOnline has you covered with all your online wagering information. In between games, head over to BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. I'm a little late on this, but I find this fascinating. Is Warren Sharp, who I reference often, really does good work. Go check out his site. A little plug for him. But he came up with really the proper way to do strength of schedule. So for so many years, people looked at strength of schedule by, we know who, first of all, the true schedule will be out this time next week. When they play, when buys are, all that stuff. But we do know who is on the schedule. You know what teams, where you're going to play the game. You just don't know when. So for years, everyone did strength of schedule with, well, what was the opponent's record last year? And we'll add them all up and average it out, and who has the toughest schedule. And that's so dumb. I mean, so much changes. I mean, if you play in the Titans, you would have been playing against Levis or Rudolph, not Ward. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many major changes. Kevin O'Connell versus Geno Smith if you're playing the Raiders, and Ashton Genty's on the team. I mean, so Steelers have had a new quarterback for 5 years in a row. If the Steelers were on your schedule, don't you think they're a little different because they have a new quarterback? So what Warren did, and he has a big, heavy gambling Vegas background, is, as I'm sure most of you know, you can go look up every team's over-under win total. Like, for example, right now the Steelers sit at 8.5. You can bet they're going to have over 8.5 wins or under 8.5 wins. So what he did was figured out all the teams that you're going to play and used the Vegas win totals today and see who has the hardest schedule. If you play a bunch of teams on your schedule that are projected to have 11 and 12 wins, that's going to be a lot more difficult road than teams that have 4.5 or 5 wins, right? 100% true. Over the last several years, the Steelers have been really in the difficult schedule neighborhood. Now, part of it's because you're successful, you're playing better teams. If you win a division, you play first place schedule, etc. I think you guys know that. But also the AFC North is good. Bengals twice, Ravens twice. This time last year, the Browns had a 8.5 or 9 win total. So going into the last several seasons, the Steelers have had really difficult schedules. And frankly, that's held up. They have not had an easy road over the last couple of years. Still have won more than they've lost, as you know. So by doing this, I wanted to highlight a couple of teams with the easiest schedule. And for whatever reason, well, I know the NFC West plays both South divisions, but the San Francisco 49ers have the easiest schedule, and there is a big gap to number 2 and 3, which is New England and New Orleans. Now, we're not going to go through the whole league. The 4th easiest is Atlanta, then Buffalo. Keep an eye on Buffalo because you look at the top teams in the AFC, the teams that we expect to be division winners, playoff teams. Buffalo's schedule is much easier than Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston, all these teams. So if you want to put a couple bucks down of who's hosting the AFC Championship game, it very well could be the Buffalo Bills. But the easiest schedules in order: San Fran, New England, New Orleans, Atlanta, Buffalo, Jacksonville, Carolina, Tennessee, Miami, Tampa. Those are the 10 easiest in order. Now, it helps to be in the NFC South or the AFC South because and I also think the AFC East outside the Bills is very, very weak. Who has the toughest schedules? By a pretty decent margin, the New York Giants has the hardest schedule out there, which doesn't bode great for Dart or that staff coming back, you draft Dart for next year's staff or whatever. The Cleve Brownies have the second hardest schedule. Two teams that were picking 2 and 3 in this past draft have a really rough road. The next ones are good teams, which there are going to be more good teams in this neighborhood because the way the schedule works, you play, for other first place teams. So if we put the Giants at 32, the hardest, the Browns at 31, the Lions are at 30, Eagles 29, Vikings 28, KC 27, Chicago 26, the Texans 25, and your Pittsburgh Steelers at 24. So below average, it's a hard group of teams are playing, but not at the very bottom. And if you look at the division, Cleveland's got a harder road, partially because Cleveland has to play the Steelers twice, or the Steelers get to play the Browns twice. See what I'm saying? And then rounding out the division, the Ravens, again, the Steelers are 24. Ravens are at 21, which is a little easier than Pittsburgh. And Cincinnati's at 17, which is like exactly league average, give or take, So within the division, as it stands now, per Vegas odds, the Bengals have pretty easily the easiest path. The Ravens are next, Steelers after that, and then Cleveland, by a very wide margin, has the most difficult stretch or slate of teams in the division. So I wanted to do this before the schedule came out because another thing Warren Sharp does, which is really impressive and a lot of work and very useful in my opinion, is he will then, after the dates come out and how much, how everything exactly is going to play out, he goes through it all and finds like where teams have rest advantages, which is really useful too. And along those lines, this will make you mad if I haven't told you. I told you last year at this time, but the Ravens had more of a rest advantage over their opponents in 2024 than any team in the history of the NFL. It's a little unfair, really. They had a massive rest advantage when you add up all the rest versus the teams they're playing that upcoming week. So after Warren puts that out, we'll go through that as well. So hope this was informative. Over and out.